So Legion and our X-Men that are in the past still have amnesia, but yet and still, all the cosmic entities are still worried about what Legion's about to do, to the point that the Watchers showed up at Landry's door. My name is Dorian, this is SEM Comics. We are continuing our coverage of Legion's Quest with Uncanny X-Men number 321. So the story starts off 20 years in the past, where you have Charles Xavier and Eric Lyncher, Professor X and Magneto, having a drink in an Israel bar where they're discussing if Homo superiors were real. The discussion is purely hypothetical, even though they're both Homo superiors. And Professor Xavier is pretty much in his normal stance. He feels like if Homo superiors were real, that humanity would learn to accept them into their culture. And Magneto is Magneto. I'm sorry, Magneto's right. He's like, humanity doesn't accept itself. The different races, they don't get along. So now you're going to tell me that a superior race is going to come to the fold and they're just going to automatically accept them? I don't think so. So as they're talking, they're interrupted because there's this musician who has no legs and he's playing a flute to get money, obviously. And these Israel military guys, I don't know, they're soldiers or sailors, might be a mixture of both. They're disrespecting the guy by pouring beer on his head. So surprisingly, it's not Magneto that wants to fight first. It's Professor Xavier. And Magneto is actually trying to talk him out of doing anything. But Professor Xavier, he ain't hearing it. He walks over to this big dude, grabs him by a pressure point, puts him down, takes his money, and gives it to the guy with no legs. So now his buddies try to get involved. One dude has a chair. He's coming from behind on Professor Xavier, and Professor Xavier blocks it. They're like, is he reading our minds? Yes, that's exactly what's happening. So now the rest of the bar looks like they're about ready to fight Professor Xavier. And now Magneto's like, I gotta get involved. So Magneto steps in between this big dude and Professor Xavier. Magneto's like, you don't want to do this. Big dude punches Magneto in the nose, and Magneto's like, all right, I guess you do. And then Magneto starts putting it on this dude. So these two are beating up the bar. Magneto's like, how many bar fights have you gotten us into? And Professor Xavier's like, one. There's only one. So the bar is beat up. Magneto and Professor Xavier walking out. Professor Xavier was like, just remember, Magneto, a dream is worth fighting for. And Magneto's like, I'll be sure to put that on your tombstone. So you guys are probably thinking that's what's happening in the past right now, but really, it wasn't. Professor Xavier is telling the story, the Cable, as the Shi'ar Empire are working with the X-Men to try to build a machine so that Cable to go back in time to try to help out the X-Men that are there. So they get the machine complete, and then Beast does a countdown, 2, 1, now. And he goes, nothing's happening. One of the Shi'ar scientists is like, patience, Earth staff. He's like, but, and all of a sudden there's a big room. And then he says, oh, my stars and gardeners. Beast used to say that back in the day all the time. You X-Men 97 fans like, what are you talking about? He says that right now. So now we go back 20 years in the past where our wayward X-Men are still suffering from amnesia. Bishop and Iceman are working in docks. The dock manager pretty much says lunch in Hebrew. Iceman's like, what? Bishop's like, he said lunchtime. If you're going to work here, you should really learn the language. So they break off and they meet up with Storm and Psylocke. So while they've been working, Bessie's been working with Storm to see if she can unlock anything in her head. They ask for an update. Storm's like, nothing yet. Bishop gets pissed and be like, well, what's taking so long? And then Bessie gets mad, like, you know what? I could send this psychic blade right through you instead. So Storm breaks up the situation and pretty much like, look, eventually we're going to figure this out. And Bishop, he's just pissed off. He's like, oh, well, go ahead and keep the faith, Aurora. Somebody has to, and he just storms off. So now we cut to Charles and Magneto in the past, and they're talking about Gabby. And Professor Xavier's like, I wonder, should I even be doing this? You know, I just got here, kind of just met her. You know, can't really say I love her just yet. And Magneto's like, look, dude, you got a good thing going on. Don't waste it. Just go ahead and tell her how you feel. So then we cut back to the hospital where Gabrielle is sitting, I guess, waiting on Professor Xavier, where we see Legion. He's at the hospital. Well, he's always been in the hospital. And from the looks of it now, seems like he has his memories back. But when she looks, it's Professor Xavier. And he's all talking to her and trying to make her like feel easy. And then he starts coming on to her. Oh, I'm thinking to myself like, dude, this is your mother. This is some incest. Why are they doing this in this comic book? Like, come on, man. So then we cut back to the docks where Bishop is still working. He walks right by Professor Xavier and Magneto. Professor Xavier kind of falls over because he gets some kind of psychic premonition. Then he's like, oh, we need to get back to the hospital. It's Gabby. and they start running. So then the Bishop is by himself, like loading something up. All of a sudden, this pink lightning comes down. He gets ready, and then we see it's Cable. So Cable's trying to talk to Bishop. He's wondering why Bishop doesn't recognize him. Then he thinks to himself, like, time travel, there's some kind of anomaly. Anyway, he understands why he lost his memory. But as soon as he goes to help, the other X-Men show up and Iceman freezes Cable in place. So somehow Cable gets out of the ice. He goes to Bishop. They're still trying to stop him. Bishop's like, no, this dude's familiar to me. I think he's here to help. Cable starts using his mental powers to start jogging Bishop's memory, and in return, by using Bishop, I guess his power goes to all the other X-Men, and he starts to jog their memory too. So on the last page, we see Professor Xavier and Magneto get to the hospital. Gabby's on the ground. They pick her up, and then she's like, oh, it's you. It's really you this time. And they're like, well, what's going on? They turn around, and they see his Legion. Like I said, he got his memories back, and he lays out his grand plan. He went back in time so that he can kill Magneto back in the day, so that his dad doesn't have to spend the next 20 years trying to stop Magneto, and maybe he can spend more time being a father. That's his plan. It's a bad plan. It's not going to work, but that's his plan. Now, 14-year-old me remembers reading this next book that's about to come up. Fatal Attractions made my head spin. The very next thing that made my head spin was this series, because what this leads into, whew, man, it was crazy. That's all I gotta say. Just buckle up seatbelts for the next episode, for the next issue.